Solon, born in 630 BC. He's known for ending oligarchical control of the Athenian government and laid the foundations of democracy. Also known as Solon the Lawgiver, he was one of the 7 wise men of ancient Greece. Here I'll summarise his life, as detailed by the philosopher Plutarch in his book, The Life of Solon. Solon was from a family of no real wealth in Athens. However, being descended from Codrus, an ancient mythical king of Athens, his family were very important to the Athenians. Solon was also related to Pisistratus, and if you've seen my past videos, you'll know Pisistratus as a future tyrant in Athens. Solon and Pisistratus were at first great friends, which Plutarch says this may be the reason why in later years, when they opposed each other politically, their opposition never brought on any harsh feelings or hatred towards each other. It is said that early on in Solon's life, his father became impoverished, as he had given more than he could afford to different charities. And Plutarch says even though his father may have had friends who could have helped him, he was ashamed to take from others, since he belonged to a family which had always been known as the one giving, not taking. So then, as a young man, to earn money, it's believed Solon became a merchant, which in ancient times was an occupation held in high regard, since it made him familiar with foreign states, friendships with foreign kings, and enormous life experience as well. Solon's philosophical views were often expressed through his poems, where here on wealth he writes, quote, "I long for wealth, but to win it by wrongful means, I have no desire. Justice, though slow, is sure." End quote. Often the wicked prosper while the righteous starve, yet I would never exchange my state for theirs, my virtue for their gold, for mine endures, while riches change their owner every day. Solon first began to make himself known in Athens in roughly 600 BC, when the Athenians were struggling with a war they were waging against the Megarians, for the island of Salamis. Solon couldn't tolerate that they weren't able to take this island, and he saw that many of the young men wanted steps to be taken to bring on the war. So Solon publicly recited a poem named Salamis, encouraging the war. And when Solon had sung it, the Athenians praised him, and Pisistratus in particular urged the citizens to obey his words. They therefore renewed the war, putting Solon in command of it. And, under Solon's leadership and strategies, the Athenians defeated the Megarians and captured Salamis. However, in the early 6th century, Athens was experiencing a time of political unrest, with the city being divided into many different parties, each advocating for different forms of leadership. Some favoured an oligarchical approach and others an extreme form of democracy and everything in between. And at that time too, there was a large gap between the rich and the poor, as all the common people at the time were in debt to the rich, which in extreme cases resulted in being sold into slavery or selling their own children. Plutarch says, quote, "The city was in an altogether perilous condition." End quote. At this point, the wisest of the Athenians cast their eyes upon Solon. Solon himself says that he entered public life grudgingly, but fearing what could become of Athens, he decided to do so anyway. Solon was chosen archon or leader of Athens in 594 BC, and his solution to these issues wasn't a revolution, but reformations to the current laws. Plutarch states that Solon tried to steer a middle course between the demands of the rich and the poor. He firstly dealt with the issues of debt obligations in Athens, and cancelled all debts. He also made it illegal to sell Athenians into slavery to pay a debt, and liberated the ones who had become slaves that way beforehand. In one of his poems, Solon boasts, quote, "He took away the record stones that everywhere were planted. Before, earth was in bondage. Now, she is free." He also prohibited for all future loans to be secured on a borrower's person. But he still refused to go to the lengths demanded by the poor, which was to redistribute the land. Firstly, Solon instituted a census of annual income and divided the citizens into 4 groups based on their income, and political privileges were given on the basis of which group you were in. Although under Solon's laws, members of the lowest group weren't allowed to hold office, they were given the right to sit and vote in the General Assembly and to sit as jurors in the courts. So, while Solon's reforms did not exactly establish a democracy, they were a crucial step and laid the foundations to the democracy we know today. Solon also introduced a new code of laws. The former laws in place in Athens were known as Draco's laws, and were very harsh, allowing people to be used as collateral for debt, and death being used as the punishment for almost every crime. Draco's laws actually gave birth to the term draconian, which is used today to describe something very harsh. Therefore, Solon revised every statute and made Athenian law altogether more humane. But no sooner were the laws of Solon put in place than people would come to him every day with praise or advice to insert something in or to take something out, and he saw that to do this was just way too much, and that if he weren't to do it, the people would rebuke him. So, wishing to escape from all of these people, he purchased a ship and sailed away from Athens for 10 years, with the hope that in this time the Athenians would become more accustomed to his laws. Among the places Solon visited were Egypt and Cyprus. It's also said that Solon visited Croesus, the king of Lydia, in its capital of Sardis. And if you've seen my previous videos, we've gone into this encounter in more detail, but the story goes, however, that Solon taught Croesus that no man can be considered happy whilst he is still living, no matter how rich or powerful he may be. The reason he gives for this is that the gods are jealous, and one minute they show a man a glimpse of happiness, and the next minute they'll take it away and utterly ruin him. Even though Croesus wasn't able to grasp what Solon was saying to him at first, he later realised it when his fortune changed for the worse. Now, even though many believe the story to be fictitious due to the chronology, to quote Plutarch, when a story is so famous and so well attested, and what is more to the point, when it comports so well with the character of Solon, and is so worthy of his magnanimity and wisdom, I do not propose to reject it out of defence to any chronological canons. When Solon returned to Athens, however, he found Athens divided into factions. One of the leaders of these factions was his childhood friend Pisistratus, and Solon was able to see that Pisistratus' plan to become tyrant. However, Solon at this time was very old, and his warnings were considered just the ramblings of a senile old man. And soon enough, not long after, Solon was proved right, as Pisistratus became a tyrant of Athens in 560 BC. From that time on, he lived quietly in retirement, passing his time writing poems in which he blamed the Athenians for their current situation. Quote, "If you're suffering now through your own cowardice, you should blame yourselves and not the gods for this. No one but you has made the tyrant strong, and that is why you are all slaves today." Many feared that Pisistratus would put Solon to death for these poems, but perhaps due to their former friendship, Pisistratus still respected and had no ill will towards him. It's believed Solon died shortly after Pisistratus became tyrant of Athens. Alright, well, thank you all for listening, and if you've got any feedback or comments you'd like to make, please leave a comment and let me know what you thought. Alright, thank you all so much.